Yeah, I just want to say something real quick about that Hill song, Ocean's Deep. Okay, there's like a phrase in there, and it's kind of like I just mentioned today, OSHA, uh, Occupational Safety um, and Health Administration. I mean, and it's like talking about the misappropriation allocation in the Mississippi and the biggest mouth of the river being the delta and the triangle thing about the schematics, the triangle representing, the delta and, what that is to, the biggest mouth, and in any case, so, I mean, it's like something about I was thinking about the OSHA and Ocean, um, yeah, and it seemed to be like, the deal about Hillsong having that song, in Ocean's Deep, my feet may fail, um, Ocean's Deep, my feet may fail. I mean, there's something about the song in a way of like a, something in my mind. I'm actually thinking about the, OSHA representing maybe I just got on the phone a little earlier today about the United States Department of Labor. I mean, if it's really only getting to the issue of like a degree level of a local area network, or what memorial is to like local area networks and land, and that song, so like thinking about something about, beyond maritime law and front lines of the beachfront, in a way of like what a memorial might only suggest is, like a local area network and land or internet protocol of like a local area network. Or, I was thinking about something about the song, Hillsong, in that song, Ocean's Deep, and the phrase being Ocean's Deep, my feet may fail, huh? And the thing with this is like, ultimately, including the Fred Flintstone thing about the pi r squared, and the exponential quotient. I mean, it seems to be so like practical application of principle, um, not limited to, the actual formula for its, intended use in computation, but likewise in practical application of principle in a whole different perspective in that way. And even, the thought of like the E equal MC squared in the EBT being something, like about, you know, E equals MC squared, like EBT, and M being a variable of like a, C squared, like, I found SE and C in pronunciation. And, Spanish is like yes, and like the pronunciation itself is like C is like vision, like do you see it? It's almost like Abraham Lincoln's like night vision. And over a period of years, it's like memory is like a real big deal about some idea of like a equilibrium, if not, something about network operations in a way of like barometric altimeter of condensing residuals of something about the fact of like what elevation is, above sea level, or even above, the thought of like, whether it be on or above par is only an issue of like what's in between, below par and above sea level, beyond the front lines of the beachfront. Is really ultimately what it's getting to. So I was kind of like thinking about that song in a way of like oceans, oceans deep, and the thing about the OSHA and what that is to like occupational safety and health administration, and the ocean. And I mean, really, it's ultimately getting to like, standards that would be set. Um, and if the Department of Labor only suggests what normally requires in labor is like very much about that being on, uh, uh, you know, a person's own feet, standing up, and quite a bit about labor. Yeah. So in any case, so I mean, ultimately, it seems to be almost getting to like the local area, making the grade once again beyond the local area network, even maritime law beyond the front lines of the beachfront. You know, and my thought about the ocean's deep, and if it's really getting to like what construction is to like the U.S. Department of Labor, and the question, hey, does like OSHA go beyond, the thought of what only seemed to be a method of banking, resulting in, maybe whether or not if an IRA or in a recent statute would even reflect any comparable reference to the exact opposite of 104 in taxation, or electronics, or itemization, or what the deal is between taxation, itemized, and um, the thing about the electronics and the Alphamex 104, and um, uh, 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 annuity that way. Yeah, really annuity. Yeah. In any case, yeah. So all that about the 104 and 401. I mean, if a 401 is exact opposite of like a in my mind, what I see Vantage Love 30 is being involved with, like the Code 10 deal of like taxation, annuity, and electronic, and some alphanumerics, some geographically, like real close information about geographics on the map, and what all that alphanumerics of 30 is to a pie chart, an eagle, thought maybe whether or not if the absentee voting would only reflect maybe, a candy bar or raising the bar, GMC raising the bar, the Baby Ruth thing about, absentee voting being, really not necessarily that, in the form of like, the truth, Ruth the truth, I mean, if one of the, not limited to, an absentee voting reflecting maybe the Book of Ruth or the truth, and all the alphanumerics of like 87, ultimately getting to the Annuit Coptus minus Transfiguration, okay, equaling 12 numerically, and alphanumerically 87. In any case, yeah, so like I was thinking about that because that song by Hillsong, Ocean's Deep, my feet may fail, huh? Are the actual words in the song, and what maritime law might only seem to be maybe like on the surface, in the way of like what that is to maybe what a foundation is and is not, or what actually is the real issue of liquid equity, or really what that is to like a footprint on the front lines of the beachfront, and a carbon footprint of like of international exporting issues, like of huge manufacturers. And really at the interview, that information is most definitely at the interview about anyone who reads it might not see it even if they had been to church, but when reading like all the material, like at one of those huge manufacturers, I mean, it's like a worldwide manufacturing of distribution. I mean, that information is most definitely at the interview about the front lines of the beach, right? And I think about the footprints, in my mind, there's many versions of it, but the one that like really seems to be like, the real deal about, I mean, like the real deal about the front lines of the beach, right? It's like two people walking on a beach, but they're invisible, okay? The footprints are there. And then there's like four footprints being two people, and then all of a sudden there's like the one set of footprints on the front lines of the beach, right? And the question, Lord, where were you when I needed you? It's like this when I was carrying you, and it's kind of like I mean, anyone that's like really been involved with Christianity will eventually meet someone, or they themselves know that much about something about a Christian thing, and religion, and that way is very much that, and that is the information that, I mean, a person would have to actually read the whole entire part about the presentation and the way of like before, during the interview, but yet the information being provided to read. And that was something I really recognized about that information. There's two that I'd been to, and there's like a third one. I'm trying to actually think about it because I mean, really, it's really seems to be the real deal about memory and what that is to why litigation is not de facto, or like who's kidding him, but or why a patent is not a copyright once again, or the real deal about the whole entire issue. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to include that real quick because I mean, it seems to be like the significance of like what an interview is, and in way, or what a footprint is as compared to carbon footprint, and the distinguishable difference of what interview is predominantly maybe the difference between the color code of even the thought of what a front line of the beachfront is as compared to like making a grade beyond local area networks of like land, and still like and to deal about surface to air, and what amphibious is beyond the front lines of the beachfront and maritime law, in a way of like what I see is like ultimately getting through the Federal Communications Commission, obeying something amphibiously of J. Edgar Hoover, in the way of like being airborne, likewise of the Air Force, yet of aeronautics, even of NASA, and all that stuff about re-entering the atmosphere, beyond a method of banking, beyond the Social Security Administration, and whether or not if the IRA normally involving employment would normally reflect whether or not if a foreknowledge of knowing whether or not if an IRA had ever been designated or itemized in a way designating what an IRA is normally on a tax form, whether it's used or not used, or maybe if that's a projected estimate of only maybe distribution, or maybe the thought of like on behalf of representation in the way of like product information or product registration, or if that's likewise maybe a neglect based upon lack of experience, or if that's really the issue of the entire deal about being all airborne about the getting to the point of like, hey, a star is born, I mean, for real. In today's world, it's kind of like, I mean, ignoring it. I mean, even knowing, even really, really truthfully, it's phenomenally, amazingly, not humorous to me at all, thinking that so many things have maybe been presented of available information and not really ignoring quite a bit about, what has happened or, um, yeah, in a more productive manner that would, not be, the question of whether knowing or not knowing is only what the thought of a degree level, only opportunity means it's non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization under corporate and business law as a method of banking. Um, or whether if the ERISA statute is only going to reflect maybe the alphanumerics of 6 being 52, um, the thought of like, really, I mean, if the ERISA statute is only, the acronym ERISA is only representing, some thought of even, some thought of Ed McMahon, the American Family Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes, and if you enter now and enter the early bird, you gotta be kidding me. It's kind of like almost like the IRA and the ERISA statute of, color code that would represent maybe what maritime law might only mean, and something of the IRA of, the United States Treasury of the Internal Revenue Service based upon what participation means as taxable income, yet earning the benefit of ultimately, now supplemental security income or forbearance in a way that represents, anything separate than a combine of like a Pell Grant being a grant itself. Yet, normally in student loans, I mean, or is it just me? I mean, for real, that when a student loan is normally given a grant, that sometimes its full amount is not really considered enough to cover the entire academic, towards a degree, and actually like a percentage of like a guaranteed student loan. I mean, the only thing that seems to be like guaranteed about it might only be whether or not if the U.S. dollars, the demanded requirement of participation, required maybe more so involving geographic attachment as a loan, geographically attaching, the thought of maybe the U.S. $1 that way, or maybe not the degree level of like excusing what having fair use is in the way of like a intellectual or a claim that way, but forbearance involving a student loan normally automatically involves, a Pell Grant or what a GI Bill might only represent. And when and where, the real GI Bill is, the issue, or, really, something about it, I might think about a little bit more before I really start talking about the GI Bill. But, like a Pell Grant automatically is, the thought of like maybe the thought of like really what a forbearance and a guaranteed student loan only means to, where's identity in the method of banking beyond a transaction in a bank is ultimately like whether or not the forbearance actually putting a total complete hold on the combine, as if not that it's null or void, but an actual perception of the reality of it like really happening. What's the real deal between a student loan being combined with a grant? I mean, is there some kind of accusation of the Internal Revenue Service that way identifying participation, and whether or not if product registration is only whether or not if a neglect based upon lack of experience is only the thought of distribution, or what the real deal is about product registration, or maybe even if an IRA had been itemized. I mean, if there's going to be the issue like that was like made available as a registered charity based upon an entire endorsement of like a commercial paper, it gets right back to the deal. It seems to be like the big deal about whether or not if the EBT, which was actually identified and available as a card itself, don't even require going to the bank. I mean, at all. Yet the availability to what many people may have only known of like what was in like food stamps and like getting into the Lone Star card, then ultimately the supplemental nutrition assistance program. I mean, if it's really getting to the on par issue of like the EBT reflecting E equal MC squared, and the thing about the even like the deal about the LG. I mean, and something about somewhere in my mind I'm like so like a drummer, okay. And I automatically think about, alphanumerics, and automatically it's like an EBT and E equal MC squared, or M being like a variable. Or likewise, in addition, when the alphabet is reversed, M is N, and N is M, 13 is 14, 14 is 13, which seems to be the 12 Federal Reserve Banks of, like, whether or not even the Jehovah's Witness, the beginning of the last days thing of, like, the 1914 thing, but I've seen it both as provided information about the 12 Federal Reserve Banks, and, like, the grand opening of, like, the 12 Federal Reserve Banks. I've seen it both as 1914 predominantly first, and then the 1913, I've seen it both ways. And I didn't even realize at the time that, I hadn't even really even thought of, like, alphanumerics in any kind of way till really June of 1992. But I noticed it, and it's like I didn't even, like, compute as, like, acknowledging. It's just like, only a photographic memory is kind of like ignoring it to that extent, and as significantly not important. I mean, I didn't even have that, because really I didn't really know anything about alphanumerics that way, or combining two numbers for, like, an analytical of, like, both, alphanumeric, or, integrating factors and compatibility, or, practical application of principle that way, or, something reality that gives the appearance of identical identity or identical meaning, yet different in value, and vice versa, identical in value, but, total distinguishable difference in identity, and all that stuff about, compatibility and integration that way, involving alphanumerics and linguistics. But anyways, it's kind of like I seen that with, like, the 12 Federal Reserve Banks, and, something about that I'd been to the Jehovah's Witness, and that Watchtower thing about, the last days, like the beginning, the last days of 1914 is like a Jehovah's Witness Watchtower thing, like, about the Jehovah's Witness, okay, and, like, Pearland, like an act of God being 71 in Pearland, right? In any case, so, like, the list goes on and on about, Jehovah and Texas and Mexico, and some ideology of, like, secrets of the temple, how the Federal Reserve runs the country, and the history of the U.S. dollar below the equator, and, South America, and identifying, what seems to be involved, like, Latin terminology, in my mind automatically, seemed to be like a color code, not limited to color code, yet of, like, a Notre Dame thing about them. Really, is that the promissory note? Is it really? GMAC, huh? General Motors Acceptance Corporation. Is that a promissory note, huh? Notre Dame. Or is it just a practical application of principle? I was, like, thinking about that, that OSHA, and what that is to, like, a Department of Labor. And the question, like, does the Department of Labor only present maybe an economic factor of only non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization as opportunity, or what normally results in, like, a degreed or non-degreed issue that way? Or does OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, go beyond that fact of normally, the Department of Labor normally identifying whether a non-degreed issue is only what international law of having fair use might only identify as participating factor of intellectual, or whether human capital is really the issue, going, through a circuit in Geneva, Switzerland, of identifying, like, investment terminology, going beyond itemization into the expenditure part about the, the aggregates, the M1, M2, and M3 of, like, monetary, domestic, and gross national product. In that way of, like, what having the right to assemble only means to the freedom of press and freedom of speech, or, why the Fifth Amendment is not necessarily a non-profit organization, or why Bitcoin is, like, once again, not cryptocurrency, why U.S. patent is not a copyright, or the real issue of whether patent pending is only, making a grade beyond internet protocol, local area networks, or, that stuff about the song I'm thinking about now, and OSHA, being the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or the OSHA and the Oshan, or the "In God We Trust" thing about the U.S. dollar. In God, huh? I mean, is it, like, really an OSHA involving, normally unions, like construction? I mean, if the only deal about how property is designated as, projected estimate options and futures, or, what it is to, like, a starborn, or maybe, like a 75 floor tower, high-rise building, a 75 floor Visions Tower, yeah, high-rise building, huh? Right here, yeah. Might as well be a stars born. Get all airborne, beyond, the psychic warrior, America's foremost psychic spy, and the cover up of the CIA's top secret Stargate program. Wow. Huh, an international baptism, huh? Not limited to. Hey. June 14th, 1992, huh? Woo. And now it seems to be like the deal about local getting the surface to air beyond Ocean's Deep. Feet may fail thing, or is like a really, is there like a problem with the foundation or the idea of like the International Electrical Electronic Engineering Organization, the big O thing about, even going into the real deal about Ocean's Deep, OSHA, huh? The Delta Force, a misappropriation, allocation of the Mississippi River, huh? Like a issue like an SD swiping my card. Am I having an OSHA safety, or it's not really the absentee, it's the safety. It's a safety deposition, huh? The SD card, swiping the credentials, and my toilet paper's not supposed to be magnetized. Wow, or beyond the fine arts and humanities, thought of like beyond the abstract and satire and more, color coordinated, more presentable, welcoming, maybe more in a pastel, right? I mean, really, logic circuitry for real, right? So anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna kind of like leave it at that right now because yeah, it's already going on like 21 minutes and like 13 seconds. Okay, so I'm gonna like stop right there and take a break. Okay.